Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Bonehead Collective and episode 5 of the Fabletop Podcast. Diddy is not joining us today as he had some personal matters to attend to, but today we are joined by the fanciest man in phandalin, Varud himself, Mark.
Hey everyone.
So, before we get into this, Mark, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Good. I've had some time away from our game. As everything opens up, you get dragged away. But I'm looking forward to getting back into it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I have the same amount of responsibility as you do. But the week we had off was a very much needed refresher for my brain, I think. So guys, as you know, what we usually do is bounce topics around with each other, and because Mark is our guest here, we are opening the floor to him today and his topic of choice, which is...
I think, I was having a good hard think about it. And one thing that I don't think is played enough is Encumberance and weight limits. I was wondering what your thoughts were on it. Especially being an online game, that I think there are some aspects that are forgotten or ignored because it's just easier for the flow of the game.
Yeah, admittedly, I'm one of those people when I make a character, I click Encumbrance off and turn off coin weight as well.
Yeah.
I think the way I operate, like, as a DM when it comes to Encumbrance in my games is... unless it is something that is like truly colossal, I'm probably not gonna put a weight limit to it. But if you're carrying like 1 or 2 weapons and armor, the way I see it is you're wearing the armor and you've probably got the weapon on your side, so it's not that big a deal.
I always think when I first started playing, like most people do, you obsess about the finer details.
Yeah.
And when I first started playing, my first character ever is in Pathfinder, a rat folk gunslinger. The gun itself takes up most of your encumbrance, and rats don't have a lot of strength, so you basically only can carry your gun, leather armor, and bullets.
Jeez. That's
it. And so like when you play it strict like that, and then I think as I began to play, I think there was less role play in terms of the encumbrance limits, because I think we'd started like, oh yeah, if you're encumbered, then it reduces your run, your walking speed, etc. But I think a lot of people just tend to ignore it. I kind of like that aspect because it forces you to make, much like video games, tough decisions on loot.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, I haven't played anything before 5th edition. I'm probably one of the biggest heathens when it comes to D&D, only being on 5th edition. But I think when it comes to like encumbrance and stuff like that, it's much like dark vision. Me and Diddy talked about this in a previous episode. A lot of people tend to forget the details of dark vision. It's not just 60 feet you see in the dark. It's like 30 feet dim, bright light, and then 30 feet dim. I do like the idea of encumbrance if we were going to play like a campaign or something where there was a survival aspect to it, where there was like greater circumstance, like you had to weigh up your decisions between maybe like healing items and weaponry. Maybe like a zombie apocalypse kind of campaign.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree with what you said. Like, when it comes to players picking the finer details at first and then they get like muddied over time. I think encumbrance is one of those things, especially if they get like a really cool item or a piece of armor or weapon, and they're like, oh well, you can't have that, otherwise you'd be over encumbered, and then they have to make that sacrifice of what they have to pick. I think that at a point, especially for newer players, probably gets frustrating.
Yeah, and the bag of holding certainly addresses all that. Once that's introduced, you don't really have to worry about anything. I think the loot aspect as well is that in our Thursday campaign, we're not a loot heavy group. I mean, your character is a, if there's things to be found in chests, then yes, that's fair enough. On bodies, it's purely for maintaining the game, like keeping it rolling on. And there was another character in the game who's now left, who was a serial looter, where he checked every body for loot. And I know Diddy ran the game so that you wouldn't find any. You would only find, a boring trinket. So I guess that makes it easier, because we're not going, we've got 4 sets of leather armor, splint or whatever, and chain, and that we're having to then go and sell like huge amounts of items. It's find gold, gems, that's it. So it does mean that we're not actually encumbering ourselves.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know if you've played the Fallout series yourself.
I have, yeah.
It's like playing like Fallout 3 and you've got like 12 combat shotguns because you don't want to give up anything else. And I don't know if you can speak to this as well, but I was always one of those people where if I ever had to repair a weapon, I was always doing it begrudgingly, because I just wanted to clear up more room for...
Yeah, I think the combat shotguns as well were worth quite a bit, so they're always good to loot. I mean, that kind of like, those sort of games gear themselves to like loot and then eventually forcing your hand. I mean, the Fallout loot system is pretty ridiculous, because you can give yourself perks to give yourself 200 extra pounds, and you can carry a ridiculous amount. I know that in future games they made it harder, because you've got to carry your power armor, and it runs out. It's got batteries, and but in 5th edition, I do. It's not something I certainly miss, but it's an interesting aspect to the game. Much like I was going to suggest this as a topic as well, how useful rations are in the backpack, because that's like another one where it's like, I gave myself an adventurer backpack, and then no one ever goes, I'm refilling my rations, or like, I haven't eaten for 2 days, like I'm so hungry.
I think my favourite example is like with an adventurers pack, you get like 50 foot of rope and then like 10 pitons.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's a sheer cliff in front of you, and everyone's like, can I just try and climb it? And you end up rolling like athletics or acrobatics, instead of that one smart person go, well, this is climbing equipment, so it might help my roll if I use this. I don't think I've ever seen anyone use that.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if it was when you guys were creating characters the first time we all ran our Thursday game, and someone was like talking about, do I need this in my pack? Or I don't know if might have been a different game, but it's like the grappling hook.
That was me. I was looking for a grappling hook at some point.
Yeah.
My original plan was 3 heavy-duty meat hooks and some rope.
Yeah, I do remember that now. But it's just how, like, and yes, you do use. I think the rope is something that you do use. I mean, we certainly used it quite a bit in one trap-laden cave.
Yeah, I don't remember the specifics of what we're doing in that cave, but I do remember we used Zenfire as basically an anchor point, as the rest of us like did the hang upside down, like the what's it? I don't know how you describe it, like a roast pig situation where you're like hanging upside down and just scoot across.
Oh yeah. I think it was a trap. It was a pit trap, and it was the mines of Phandalin. I always
Phandelver.
Pronounce it. Yeah, Phandelver. I always say it wrong. It's the stupid. It's because it's the mines, and then the name of the town is Phandalin. So it's like I constantly mix them together. But it's the bit where you're getting to you're like the catacombs, the tomb of like the previous owners of the.
Was this under the manor?
Yeah, under the manor. Yeah, and we used the rope to kind of secure our way across and then back. having someone who's like acrobatics to, I think you set the rope on one side or...
Yeah, I think I had, at the time, Artemis jump the gap, and then we basically tied the rope around Zen's neck and everyone just tightrope walked across.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like what I was saying to Diddy in the last episode. It's like, certain things that may seem useless could have, like, different utility. Like, example off the top of my head would be rations, for example. Like, maybe you could use them as, like, bait for animals and stuff.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, your original point of rations and all those kind of, like, little knickknacks that you get in a pack at the start, they're not really useful, no.
No, I mean, like, it's, how hard you want to actually roleplay it in terms of, where... I'm just trying to actually find the page where it's got the list of how ridiculous everything is. But I mean, there are some ridiculous items that they have. Like a candle or chalk. I mean, that's probably very specific too.
Yeah. Especially if you get like packs that have torches in as well. That candle's not really going to be...
Yeah. I mean, the torch is actually probably one of the most important parts in the...
Yeah, I think across all 3 games I'm in the week, torches are probably like the most used item. I think the only other... Oh, yeah, sorry. Oh, no, carry on.
No, I didn't have a point, sorry. I was just interrupting for I was just being an idiot.
I think the only other things I've seen get used, not as much as torches, but like often enough, are like tinder boxes.
Yeah.
I've seen... so I'm technically in 4 games. I am in a monthly game as well. And the amount of times my character in that has basically like been a little arsonist with his tinderbox. They are quite handy, especially if you don't like have a torch handy and there's like a puzzle that requires you to light a torch or something.
Yeah.
So I suppose you could say that like major use items do have like an analog to make up for it, so like torches and then tinder boxes, but
and I think one thing that we probably haven't done in our campaign is I know in like the when you're campaigning in person, because you're using models, camping becomes a lot more important because it like when you're ambushed, it's very much like your position, the nighttime glare. It's probably not even to do with the like being there or in person. It's just we just haven't had much opportunity of like, you camp and then you're ambushed. Whereas like I've campaigns long ago, it was any time you went anywhere, every time it turned night, you had to set up camp, you had to set guards. So whoever was on guard had to be ready for an attack, and it was fire and things like just those little bits to add extra stress.
Yeah, I mean, not as knock to Diddy and he's DMing, but there have been times where like we would do like a whole week's travel in just a sentence. I don't personally mind that. Like that's his style. That's his want to do. Our Friday games though are very much as you described. So at the end of each night, it's like you set up camp. We usually assign 3 watches, 4 if we really have to. I mean, I think as well what it is players have a expectation that if they roll high on a perception check during a watch, something has to happen.
Yeah.
Which is a topic I want to go into a little bit in another episode. But yeah, I think a reason why at least a few of the DMs I've played with tend to skip over the nighttime.
Yeah, I think especially if your campaign has already got quite a lot to it, the like camping and overnight encounters can take up like an hour, or like, you know, especially if, say a goblin fight, would be quite easy. That's still a whole combat that you've got to then go through, and that's got nothing to do with the story. So it's whether you want to flavor it that way, or like Diddy does, where he adds a lot more narrative, heavy. If you understand what I'm trying to say. Yeah. It's more about the destination rather than the journey.
Yeah.
Which I really enjoy. So I've not been in his game and said, "Oh no, we're not being," you know, I've never thought that.
No, I mean, it's not exactly a detriment, especially if, you know, your travel is going to take like upwards of like 2 weeks. That's like, if you do like 3 watches a night, that's, I'm not even good at math, but that is I think getting close to like 50 rolls just to do 2 weeks of travel. And then if the BM rolls like for a random encounter, and then you've got to add a combat in there somewhere as well, that can really take the wind out of a player's sails.
Yeah. And I think, it'd be like a 2-week travel. That's quite a lot to be doing. Like, everyone set shifts, especially if you're. You're generous, because that was a party of 3. Imagine if you've got more in the game. Yeah. For 2-week travel, that's ridiculous. But
I'm gonna do the maths quick, just because it is something that has.
Unless you say like, oh, you've got passive perception, and he just does that, so that you can just skip through a lot of the.
Yeah, I mean, if we were doing like 2 weeks of travel, 3 watches a night, that is 42 individual rolls just to get to your destination.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
That is.
But I mean, I think in our campaign, we're generally traveling through quite like pacified areas.
Yeah.
So you can. It definitely fits with the narrative that you can just get from one city to the other without being hassled.
Yeah, I mean, and it does make sense, because we're playing along the Sword Coast, so you've got like Neverwinter, Waterdeep. There's going to be like guard patrols and like outpost setup, so it does make sense that you're not getting ambushed every 5 minutes by like goblins, bandits, wolves.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a detriment, I think, to not have those kinds of encounters, because at least for us as a group, it's like you said, like the traveling is literally just the vehicle to get us to our destination. We are a very much in the moment kind of group. I heard something the other day that I think sums our group up really well. It's a 4-step thing. Make a plan, follow the plan goes to shit, make it up as you go. I think that sums our group up quite well.
I mean, it has taken us a while to get to our what works, because I think at the start, and God bless Diddy for being patient with us, but it was like how long we spent at like doing so mundane tasks, and like, so it's part of the evolution of my character, in that I am more of your barbarian of like kicking down doors. And the problem was that at the start we were like, okay, just in case there's this person on the door, you try and lockpick it, and then and then it would be half an hour, and like, Diddy's sitting there just like, nope, the lock, you don't open it, and it's like,
yeah. I do remember getting into it and like a couple of weeks into the session, and he was just like, right, look, that's it. You get 5 minutes of planning, and that's it.
And a part of me thinks that he added the I found the axe, I can't remember it off the top of my head.
I think it's called Fell. Yeah.
So that it would make it easier for me to kick and bust down doors.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't even need to like roll. I could just like smash through everything, any wooden door.
Yeah, I mean, Also, just to clear something up, in a previous episode, I'm under the assumption you've seen the previous episodes. Thank you for the support.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I was watching. I was paying attention.
You are a hill dwarf, aren't you?
I am a mountain dwarf.
Right. See, we assumed it was hill dwarf because you said you came from like the wilderness and such.
Yeah, so it was my whole backstory that my mountain clan had been raided, and I'd been the only survivor as a kid, and that I had, in revenge, gone seeking the attacking tribe of goblins, and then after that spent 10 years at penance for not being there in the village when the attack happened, and that's when I come out of the wilderness. Although I think I sent you a video of it earlier today of a party encounter when a level 1 character makes a backstory. When, you know, it's like, oh, I fought this, you know, and I was thinking about that today, that I made a backstory where I defeated an entire tribe of goblins as a level 1 character. It's like so silly, it's so stupid.
It is. To be fair, I think yours would probably still be on the more tame side of things, because I don't remember who gave the example, but there is that one of like, oh, I am a powerful wizard, I've defeated entire armies with just a wave of my hands, and then he's like a level 1 sorcerer who's got like just the catapult spell.
Yeah.
I mean, when it came to like my backstory, I wanted to keep mine very simple. I basically wanted to go against all of the typical conventions. So both my parents are still alive. They're really well. They're retired on an island somewhere. Diego had a happy childhood. Like, he didn't, you know, come into bad luck or anything that forced him to become a thief. He just really enjoyed the fucking thrill of it. Yeah. Like, I basically wanted, like, the least edgy rogue I could make. And I feel like I've done I mean, all things considered with what's going on in the campaign at the moment, with like the revelation, like his mates are betraying him. I think other than that, I've done a pretty good job, like, sticking it to the stereotypes at least.
I think it's a credit to you and the DM, and that you're building like extra, you're padding out your character's backstory as you go. So like, you know, the change of name, and I'm just going blank on all the extra things. I've got them written them down somewhere, but it's like those extra bits that make your character like add depth.
Yeah.
You know, that makes it a lot more interesting, and especially the story arc. With, you know, we're all like Artemis, and you're like, actually, my name's Diego, and which has been great.
I mean, admittedly, I shot myself in the foot. I could have kept the ruse up a little bit longer when we fought Scarlet in the fishing village. I didn't have Disguise Self prepared. So I was like, well, fuck, if I don't, you know, approach her, then she's just going to out me anyway. And my deception skill was pretty wank, so I wasn't going to be able to lie my way out of it. But that, like, somehow that brings me back to the point of, like, the backpacks and the fillers.
Yeah.
I don't know if your character has it or if it's like a background trait, but characters sometimes get like an items for themselves. Like it might be like a quill and a letter, or, you know, like I don't have them off the top of my head. I could pull the book out, but some characters get like a little trinket.
Yeah, I think I did actually. It was like one of it was less a trinket and like more. So I think it's dwarves that you start with either the blacksmith tools or I can't remember what the other option is. But I went with the smith's tools, but just added a story around it, saying, you know, those were my father's tools, and that I buried them out of the ash of our house and take them with me. So that was more my kind of way of doing a personal item on me. I always find, I think DMs can have probably more input in terms of like what extra things you can have on you as like something interesting. Like yes, you can have a named weapon, but it's just not a plus weapon, or you can have like a special item that's a family heirloom, rather than just being like crossbow, sword, those sort of things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the item I took. I think the item I took was the pen and quill, but I basically threw the pen away and had because I didn't have photographs back then.
Yeah.
So I had a a drawing of Diego's parents, and that's just kind of like when things get too much, like that picture's what grounds him to reality. That's what helps him take a step back. But yeah, no, I think my point to that was I've actually lost my point. That is amazing. Yeah, it's we talk about things like rations, pittance. I can't remember the other example we gave of useless items, but I think those little trinkets are a good example of something that is ultimately useless. The chance of that being important to a given situation is never going to be a thing, but they are one of those items that can, in their own sentimental way, enrich the world around you.
Yeah, and I think if you're a keen enough role player, that you will kind of look at your backpack and hopefully kind of have a general understanding of why you would have these things, not just I have an adventurer's backpack because I'm an adventurer. It's why would you have rope? Why would a mage fresh out of school have a rope? Or a barbarian, yes, in the wild, a thief, yes, but a mage, cleric, that kind of those don't make sense.
Do you think,
yes, they're useful, but
do you think it sometimes come down to it's not what fits the character more? People will just look at what's more useful in a given situation.
Yeah, definitely. I think, especially for beginners, but even experienced players, when you're making your first character, it is just easier to go adventurer's backpack, especially with D&D Beyond, because I think you just press the button, or it's quite an easy thing to do rather than if you're manually writing it.
Yeah.
Going through all the items and adding it in your inventory.
Okay, so I've got one last question for you to tie things back before we wrap. So you mentioned in Pathfinder, at least, if you were over-encumbered, it would affect your... was it just your running speed, or would your whole movement speed be cut?
So, it was... you have the different levels of encumbrance. So once you hit your load, I think it reduces it halves your speed. So say, I think I was 25 feet. So then it would be 15 feet, or scaled down, so 10 feet. And then eventually, I think you couldn't travel as far in a day off the top of my head, but there was actual repercussions of being encumbered.
So would you, after working in a system like that, would there be anything you would change, anything you would add or remove?
I think if you're in a game and everyone's happy about it, that you'd have encumbrance. Yes, it adds a finicky little thing, but experience of video games and everything, I think everyone hates encumbrance, because you want to carry 15 rocket launchers, or 25 daggers, or whatever, and it's more annoying. So having a game free just leaves you, it's not like we're playing a game to be accountants, although we have done some of that in the game, but but imagine if every time you fought, it'd be oh no, but I want this armor that I could sell for 5. It's just, let's not worry about that. and play.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone would complain about not using Encumbrance. I think it is one of those like situational things where you're gonna have campaigns that rely on like super realism, like if you go this long without eating or drinking, you'll pass out or something. But yeah, I think it's one of those things that if they removed it from 6th edition or 5.5 or whatever the next one's going to be, I don't think there's going to be many people calling to put it back.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
But I suppose, I think I read online, judging by the time release between 4.5, was it 4.5 or just 4th edition?
4th, I want to say.
Yeah, I think it
went 3.5, 4,
Pathfinder.
5. Pathfinder's like 3.
Oh, is it? I've seen.
Yeah,
This is what I
it's
mean.
quite low.
I'm well after that. But from the release, so from 4th edition to 5th edition was about 10 years. And this decade, we are fast approaching that 10-year mark. So there's the assumption that by at least 2025, we are going to be in the next edition of D&D.
Yeah, I mean, they're always going to simplify it to make it more accessible for others with, the Stranger Things edition or campaign books geared towards that. So, I mean, it probably is inevitable that they simplify it even more so that you can lightning bolt people and not have to worry about,
I looked at a
all the
3rd edition and a Pathfinder character sheet, and I just got an instant headache looking at that thing.
Oh yeah, there's so many, like the old, if you ever play Baldur's Gate, armor starts like high and then you work down.
Okay.
So it goes like negative, and in Pathfinder you get, you've got feats and you can change your skills. You get points each level to increase your skills.
Okay.
Rather than just the bonus. So it allows more like fine tuning and adding extra abilities. And you also have to, you can really gear yourself. It's not like, oh, I'm a barbarian that's choosing the way of frenzy versus that. You're choosing and picking the feats you want to make your character better.
See, I mean, I'm one of those people who very much like to see numbers climb, so especially because like basic D&D Beyond without source books, I think the only feat you get if you're not using, say, like homebrew stuff is like the grappler feat, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I'm more than happy just putting bigger numbers on my character sheet than taking a feat at this point. But
yeah, I think it just requires a lot. The problem is you don't want to spend too much time staring at sheets and numbers. Some people do, but again, these new editions are all designed to simplify things, so you can just choose a path or and go towards that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see where it goes. I suppose talking about editions and all that would probably be a topic for another day, though.
Yeah.
Because we are running a little bit over.
Sorry about that.
No.
I think I jumped from topic to topic.
No, you know what? Honestly, it has been an absolute blast. I think this is probably the most we've spoken outside of game, and cheesy as it sounds, I've really enjoyed the talk with you today.
Yeah, it's been great. Usually I log off early just to everyone because I am a wimp and I fall asleep. As I fall asleep, you will admit that you have fallen asleep in game too, except you woke up. I didn't.
I less woke up and more fell out my chair.
Yeah,
so.
Should have recorded it.
Oh, no.
Should have recorded it. We could have played it in the...
Oh, mate, definitely. That is definitely a highlight in my D&D campaigning so far.
But thank you very much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Anytime, man. Anytime you want to jump on, shoot the shit, down for it.
Great.
But, guys, that's it. Thank you all so much for watching. Again, thank you, Mark, for coming on.
No worries. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
There you go. Part 6 will be going live with this as usual, uploading in 2s. What do you guys think about Encumbrance and filler items for backpacks and stuff? Things that ultimately get tossed aside, like the orange in the bottom of a stocking. leave that open to you. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.
I don't know what I'm doing.